Hello and welcome to the Mariana Dalto Show, the podcast where small business owners share their stories, insights, and strategies for success. I'm your host, Mariana Dalto, and today we have an amazing guest. Her name is Lizy Freudmann. Hopefully I said your last name right.
You did.
She's a marketing strategist with a special interest in behavioral economics. She's the founder of One More Thing, a strategic marketing agency. She has worked with a range of businesses through her 20-year career, including global recognized brands like Honda and Nike, as well as stores in her neighborhood serving a local clientele. Lizy loves marketing because it combines her love of storytelling with her love of people. Welcome, Lizy, to the show.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so happy to have you on my show. Happy to connect with you again. It's been a while since we talked. So
Yeah,
thank you for taking the time to be my show and to bring all your insights and expertise to the audience, to the small business owners.
yeah, I'm so happy to be here. This is so much fun for me.
I love it. All right, let's start first with your background. Tell us a little bit what inspired you to become a small business owner and start your One More Thing business.
So there's a really tough question, and there are a lot of ways to answer it. I had not, as like a child, even in college, really thought about becoming an entrepreneur. I'd sort of imagined myself taking a much more traditional route, but I found that it was really hard for me to find my footing in a more like traditional corporate environment. People would say to me when I was on job interviews, they'd say, you seem so awesome and smart, but we don't know what to do with you. You have like this talent and this talent, but like we need someone who's really going to be comfortable with this thing. And I was listening to an entrepreneur named Eric Garland speak in one of my graduate school classes, and he talked about risk and how people tend to avoid entrepreneurship because they think it's really risky. But in his mind, the idea of putting your life into building something for somebody else, where you have no guarantee that they'll be looking out for your best interest at any point, is actually riskier than looking out for yourself. And that actually really changed my perspective on what it meant to build your own business. It's like putting all of my energy and efforts into something that was mine instead of that belonged to somebody else.
Yeah, and sometimes what happens is what I've seen is like it all depends also on how you grew up. If your family a business owner, or is your family typically part of like the traditional working for corporate, right? So you kind of follow your family footsteps. So that's how you typically go one route or the other. And that's I feel like it's one of the things that happens. But sometimes you, like, with your intelligence and how smart you are, you were like, well,
Thank you.
maybe I need to look in a different way.
Yeah, and we've seen like all kinds of disruptions in the marketplace. We saw the 2008 financial collapse. We saw all kinds of things, and just my firsthand experience watching people put their careers into building these institutions that were not controlled by them lose so much overnight and have to be sort of collateral damage as these institutions try to protect themselves, made me perhaps a little more cynical than I might have otherwise been. So that's sort of the way that I fell into this.
But you did work for corporate for a while, and then you
Yeah,
switched, right?
I did. Yeah, I did.
Okay.
For a little bit, and then found my way to here.
Awesome. Well, tell us a little bit about your business. Well, how did the journey started? Did you start your business kind of on the side
Yeah.
while you were working still full time?
Yeah, I did start my business a little bit on the side as I was working full time a long, long time ago when I was working at Universal Music Group distribution. I had taken that job, which was more money and like more name recognition than previous positions I'd had, but it was less interesting work for me because I was sort of the lowest man on the totem pole and I didn't get to do my sort of startup energy vibes of like a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and everybody's all hands and it's really high energy, and I didn't want that skill to get soft. So I started taking some night classes, and I started like just, can I do this for you? Can I do that for you for just a little bit of money, or even just for free to help out, and building my skill set and learning a lot. And I did a bunch of small projects, but it helped me understand a little bit about what went into entrepreneurship. And then I decided to go to graduate school and get an MBA. And I was really like facing the, do I try to go the more traditional route or the entrepreneurship route at the end of that time. And here I am. That's the
Well,
answer.
sometimes what happens is if you go the non-traditional, like, you know, you go to school for the traditional, going to corporate, right? But if you don't do that, then there's a lot of things that even school don't teach you on how to run a business or how to start a business or what are the things that you need to do. So there's a lot of other type of courses and classes that you gotta take in order to really figure
Yes.
out how to start a business, because they don't teach you that in school, in undergrad or
No, they
MBA.
don't. And like, I took like a night class on design, right? I'm a terrible designer. I don't do graphic design, but I know that I needed to understand what designers like, what it was like on the designer side of things, so that I could at least speak to designers as a marketing person as we develop brand stuff. So like I learned about a color wheel, and I learned the different tools, and I learned, all of the different like the process of going from like a physical concept to a digital concept, and like when you're printing, when you do like colors for like consumption of digital media, but if you ever want to print a flyer, how you transfer those colors to make the brand identity consist, like all of these things that are really specific to that job function, but that I need to be fluent in if I'm going to be a marketing person. I need to at
Mm-hmm.
least be able to discuss that with someone, even if I let them take the lead on that part of the project.
Yeah, absolutely. So because you had experience working with Honda and Nike and other companies, and you do brand marketing and brand strategy, so how did you use that experience to build campaigns for the clients that you have today? Like, are you applying some of the learnings and some of the things that you kind of learned from corporate, even though, as a small business owner, it's a very different job, but did that help you from a branding standpoint to help other clients?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are some things that no matter who you are, or what kind of business you are, or what size you are, there are certain things that are true universally. And that is like your audience is people. You have to be able to speak to people. You have to be able to communicate with people. You have to understand who they are, and why they would want to interact with your business or product or service, or however you want to present yourself. And I think that no matter what service you provide, how big your company is, um, where you like live in the world, it's really important to remember that at the end of the day, the people who write the checks are people. And
Yes. You're helping people. I mean, it's a business, but that's how the communication, the connection with the person that you're helping with is where everything starts. And
yeah,
that's how you help them achieve their goals, right?
yeah. And so like knowing what role your business fills in the life of the consumer, whether it's a business to business thing and you're selling software, or if it's like, water bottles, or you're a flower shop or whatever, like what motivates people to need your service, or to want your service? What is the driving impetus behind that? And a lot of times we can only just guess. But from a marketing perspective, experimenting with our best guesses based on what we know of like existing customers and what any market research that exists, and putting together our best guesses and then testing to see if it works. Those are, I think, universal no matter what kind of business you are.
Hmm. So, so in your experience, what's the biggest challenge businesses face when it comes to developing a solid brand strategy? What are the things that your clients have faced? They're like, okay, let's start from square one here.
Okay, so this is a great question, and I love talking about this. This is sort of my storytelling, like my little storytelling brief lesson. I try to encourage people not to try to tell the whole entire story all at once, which people really want to do. And they want to sell all of their services to every person in the world today. And like you can't do that successfully. You have to like pick a thing and like lean into that thing for a time. And that doesn't mean that you're not all of the other things that you also have or offer, but you can't confuse people too much. So the way that I try to, encourage them to think about it is like a TV show, where today you're telling the story of like one episode of the TV show. So you're saying like, this is a story arc with these characters, and like at the end of the show, like part of this plot's going to be resolved, or we're going to have moved it forward. And then there's like a season, and the season is like a longer story arc that involves the themes of each episode and sort of ties them all together. And then there's like the whole series, and the whole series is all of the seasons with all of the episodes, and the whole series is the full brand. So I try to encourage people to say, like, you don't need to be telling the story of this whole series and everything that's happened and all the characters that have been involved and all of the plot lines today. You can, like work on one episode and really nail that episode and know that it's going to build on the episode that came before. And then the episode that comes tomorrow is going to build on the one that came today. And then you're going to have a story arc for a season. And then beyond that, you're going to have a story arc for a whole series. And people are going to be able to look at that and say, like, I understand what this series, the story of this series, and how it, how it was made and the values that it expresses and the different characters. And I have a connection with this character because I really like this episode and this season, or this story arc really resonated with me. So I just try to tell people to think of it in that form, or as like a similar analogy would be like books. Like sometimes it's a chapter and sometimes it's a book and sometimes it's a novel, but you have, or like a series, but you have to, write each chapter as its own like piece of that story.
So this is great that you're explaining this. So if people come to you like around this topic, what is the main problem that you solve for them? Like if they come to you, what is the main thing? So then you kind of like, so then we can guide the audience about like, okay, well, how can Lizy help me? What are the things that, clients typically think about? This is my problem, and Lizy has one of my solutions for my problem.
So it's helping people break down which piece of like how to think of who they are, what they do, and the services they offer, and where that fits into. Is it an episode? Is it a season? Or is it part of the series? And like which piece of the story goes into which thing? So I used to do a lot of work with musicians, and one thing that I learned is that like when you're in an album sales cycle, you are really focused on only that album sales, like that album. You don't talk about the one that came before that or 3 albums before that when you're on the TV shows being interviewed or you're giving press. You talk about the album that you just wrote and that you're currently selling. So like that would be an example of an episode. Or if you've just launched a new product line, or if you're just offering a new service, you talk about that service. You don't need to feel that it detracts from the rest of your brand or the rest of your services by talking about that one, because you talk about those in the other episodes of this season. And so helping people say like, okay, this is for this episode, and this is how we're going to run this episode. And then this is part of your season. And so like these people, like these things, you go into this season to reach these people. And then like overall, this is something that you want people to take away from your whole brand identity. And that's like the series. That's the series. So which talking point belongs in which part of that campaign?
I feel like in my world, the way I do marketing and the things that I do to help people, my customers is like, I see like you have a website. In your website, you have kind of like the menu of products, the overall like big thing that you offer, like, but then you have funnels, and then you have a funnel or a specific offer, and you talk specifically to that customer, to that offer. You're very strategic on what you are and very focused on your communication for that customer and that offer. And you
Yeah.
don't deviate for anything else that you do in your business. And I feel like that's how I interpret how you help people, like from my way of working. Like, does it make sense or no? Is
Yeah,
that
yeah, it does make sense. I would say like what you're talking about is, as far as I understand, is like a really well-designed homepage. And that is phenomenal because that allows you to be like, oh, you watched this episode of my show and you want to come here, learn more about this episode, or you want this one. And like the episodes are all brought together on the website to sort of represent the whole series or the whole season. But a lot of the clients that I work with, they have limited resources when it comes to paid media and when it comes to their ability to produce content. So they are really reluctant to do paid media or content production that focuses on one thing, like that album that was just released. Because they're like, well, if we only talk about this album, people won't know about my other album. I'm like, yeah, they will. They totally will, because you're going to like talk about this album in a way that shows that it is part of a bigger series. And like, here's how you do that, and getting people to feel like I am not missing parts of myself if I am promoting this one thing.
do you have a case study or something that you can kind of give an example to the audience of, like, without saying names of the client, but kind of like big picture, this is what the client came for, and this is how I help them with this. And so then maybe they can see more. Is that an easy thing to ask, or?
Not an easy thing to ask. I mean, let me think. I think, there was one client that I worked with that was about green energy. I don't want to go like into more detail
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I
yeah, you
want to
can.
protect
Yeah,
the client, but it was like green energy and how individual homeowners can make their homes a little more energy efficient, which saves them money on things like
right.
heating and cooling and whatever else. And that's like, there's a lot of different people you speak to in that like ecosystem of green energy. It's like vendors who install green, like energy efficient blinds, and it's like HVAC installers that make energy efficient HVAC machines, and then it's homeowners who need to be motivated to buy the products and educated that like this will save you money because your cooling bill will be lower in the summer if you use these shades, which are UV protection. So it was hard to work with these clients and say, like, you cannot talk to the people who are installing the energy efficient windows and the people who are buying the energy efficient windows in the same ad or the same content. You have to divide those audiences. And they were like, no, I want to tell that story. They won't understand that we can provide all of those things. I was like, they will, because you're going to direct them to this place or you're going to mention it, but you have to be clear who you're telling the story to and what that story consists of. So it's, if you buy these like UV protectant shades that are energy efficient for your windows, from us and our supplier list, which you can find here, this is what will happen. You will have cooler homes naturally. You'll be able to run your HVAC less. You'll save money. It'll be more environmentally friendly, all of these things. But you can't also say like, and if you want to install these energy efficient windows, come to us and we'll match you with these customers, because then like the story gets confused.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, that's clear. Okay, that's good. Good
Is that
example.
help? You feel like that?
Yes, yeah, that was helpful. Yes. So then I think you mentioned that you're gonna provide a lead magnet or some
Yeah.
sort of like free resource for the audience regarding storytelling. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so I'm going to create a little worksheet to help you think through the episode series, episodes season series like hierarchy. And so like an episode could be talking to an audience, like homeowners could be one episode, and then window installers is another episode. And then like the whole series, I mean, the whole season becomes about like energy efficient windows and home upgrades. But the series is actually a whole story about like how energy efficiency ties into better economic outcomes and better outcomes for the environment. So each of these pieces is part of a whole. So my worksheet is going to help people think like, which are the talking points that deserve their own episode, and how does that come together at the end of the like season to paint a full picture? And then like, how does that tie into the whole series, which is the brand?
Excellent. Okay, perfect. So we will put that free resource in the show notes, so then for people to leverage that and maybe can start understanding how to best communicate to the right audience in a structure that makes sense to communicate their brand, right? And what they,
Yeah.
how
And
they
try
help
not to
people.
do too much with each set. Like can't try to do too much in every episode per se, right? Like you really have to stick to that. We've all seen TV shows where like the plots, like you just can't follow. You're like, what's happening? There are too many things going on. Like we've all,
Right, right. Like you overwhelm the people who are
yeah,
listening or watching or
yeah.
reading, because it's like too much. I'm like, give me more, maybe no more than 2, 3 points that I can
Because like,
remember.
who is this person again? Like, where did they come from?
Yes,
Like, what is this character
yeah.
here for? So like making sure that you're trying to structure each episode to make the point you want it to make.
Cool. So we're almost at the end of the show, and I really wanted to ask you this question. What's the biggest lesson you've learned in your career and that could benefit, new entrepreneurs or small business owners who are maybe starting out, that could maybe inspire them to think differently, do something,
Huh.
you
This is a,
know?
this is a hard one, and it's one like I guess I'm gonna go with something that I am in the process of learning, and I'm still in the middle of figuring out for myself a little bit, which is that like,
I mean, we always evolve, right? This is
yeah,
not like a
right.
perfect.
That's it. That's the thing. Like I am not the same person that I was like a couple of years ago. Life has happened, things have changed. And so how I run my business and how I think about my business and who I want to be working with has also changed. So I'm in the process of like thinking through how I want to evolve that. And
Because you're getting the experience, and then with experience you realize what else you can do differently, because you work with clients and then you can help them differently. You realize that you might have other things of
right.
value that you can provide to them that maybe you
Yeah.
didn't do it in the beginning, but now you can.
Yeah,
So
and like, oh, I've learned I've through experience, I've realized this skill that I didn't think was that important actually really is that important. So like people really see this. So being flexible with your own methodologies, and not becoming too attached to a process or a like I don't want to say a business model because like that's so broad, but like allowing yourself the flexibility to grow and evolve and change, and being curious about potential opportunities that you hadn't really thought about
absolutely, yeah.
is
Yeah, I mean,
really,
you being curious is key, because that's how you evolve. You try new things, and then it leads you to new opportunities.
yeah, and it's a tough lesson. I mean, like it seems like people would just like naturally be like, oh, I've discovered I'm good at this and like I'm going to do more of it. But when you've been running a business, you have to figure out, like you have to sort of do some algebra and like solve for the ways that you can change things around in order to allow these new parts of your talent or your skills or connections that you've made to really flourish. So it seems like it would be easy, but I've found it to be actually very something that you need to be thoughtful about. It doesn't just like you don't just snap your fingers and find that your business adapts to where you are. You have to push your business along to where you feel like you want it to go.
Yeah, have an open mindset and be open to change and to adapt and to fail and start all over, and then you'll be fine. 'Cause that's how entrepreneurship is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Lizy. I mean, it's been amazing having you on the show. Thank you for all the insights, for everything that you provided. Before we finish the show, can you please share with our listeners where they can learn more about you and your business?
Yes. My website is onemorethingllc.com, and you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm Lizy Freudmann. Those are probably the best places to get a hold of me if you want to talk business. But I know in the show notes they'll have all of the links and so forth. So yeah, I'm really excited to meet your audience and connect with them. Everything I've seen you've done is like with super interesting, cool people. So I'm excited to get to know them better.
Thank you, Lizy. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for our listeners for tuning in. Again, I will put all Lizy's stuff in the show notes so you can reach out to her and get that free resource that can help you move your business forward. If you like this episode, please don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and let us know how you enjoy this episode. Thank you so much, and see you next time. Thanks, Lizy.